Hey everyone, and welcome to hockeyprospects.com YouTube channel. I'm Jérôme Bérubé, and as always, I'm joined by Brad Allen. And today, Brad, we got a new team, a new top 10, a new prospect to look at it. So let's take a look at the Colorado Avalanche top 10 prospect ranking made by us. So if you have any critiques, write them in the comment section. Or those comments are more than welcome. So here's what we have for the Avalanche top 10 ranking. Obviously, our last video was about the Chicago Blackhawks. Chicago, they are stacked with prospect, and they had so many draft picks. It shows. Now it's showing Colorado has tried to win the Stanley Cup, has won the Stanley Cup. The draft has not been a very important part of the or of their goal every year. So when you're trying to win a cup, you don't really care about having all those draft picks, and it's showing a bit in their prospect pool. But they still have some interesting guys, and we're gonna take a look at it, Brad. So Brad, you can start with maybe your first take on the Avalanche, your top 10 prospect list.
Obviously, it's on the weaker side. It's probably a bottom 7-8 pool, which, as you said, completely expected given the fact that they keep competing with the McKinnon-Makar tandem there. Obviously, Landeskog coming back doesn't hurt them either, and then they got Blackwood, so they got their number one. So can't blame them for their strategy in any way, shape, or form. Nabokov, we had him top 4. We moved him back. That's a mistake. It's on me. I don't think he's as good as what I've seen him ranked in the industry. Like, I've seen him as clear cut, like one of the best goalie prospects in the world and the best of that draft. He was the furthest ahead developmentally. You have to keep that in consideration. Right now, at the same age, Marcus Gidloff's ahead of him, as is Mikhail Yegorov. Right off the bat, those two right there are ahead for me. So he's like third out of those three. But again, he's further ahead, and he looks like he'll at least play for sure. The question is what role. I don't think he's a true number one, which is the reason he was never actually entered in our top 3 in our goalie ranking in the first place. Even though, again, as I've said in our upcoming Pacific show, if I could switch around things, I would have. I was not happy with what ended up being our final ranking there. But the huge thing with Nabokov is that he is a phenomenal skater. He's lightning quick, but when he uses his T-push-offs to come across the weak side to set up for a shot, he's not the best at actually recognizing when he's set to when he isn't. That wouldn't matter as much if he's 6'3", 6'4", but he's 6 feet. So everything has to be extremely precise. That's where he falls under the Dustin Wolf's, Devin Levi's of the world. Rate of recovery is actually better than Devin Levi's, though. So there are some advantages here. He can be susceptible to shots where the shooter uses a rock back or double rock back and changes from far side to short side and vice versa. The other factor is that he needs to get better at recognizing fake shots into lateral high danger passing setups at a better rate than he currently does. He'll drop a bit too often for what you want, which again, like if he was 6'4", 6'5", it wouldn't matter as much, but it really matters when you're this short. Reminds me a little bit of Nashville's second rounder this past draft, Jerome, in that way, the goalie. I can't remember his name off the top of my head to save my life. But he is a very, very, very good goalie prospect, regardless of what I've said. He is, I think, at least a 1B, and that's very good for them. The other player we'll mention here, I'll start things off. I'll mention Ivan Yunin. I'll go over the goalies. Why not? So Ivan Yunin is, I've watched the last 40 games he's played. He's one of them for me where I'm fascinated by his development because he came from the Russia U18 system and was drafted out of the Russia U18 system, which never happens. Now we had him ranked pretty aggressively, and then Colorado did us a favor there and drafted him. So his development has been extremely interesting to me. And for most prospects, curves aren't linear. Well, his was, let's say the roller coaster went off the rails. Like he dove off a 3,000-foot mountain. I didn't know if he was going to recover. He had a horrible season last year. Everything that could have gone wrong did. He was in OM system, which is one of the top powerhouse of the MHL. What that meant is they had a goalie in front of him, was older than him, more developed than him. And not only did they rely on him more than Union, when Union was playing in games where it got to a overtime or shootout, he was replaced during the game, regardless of how he was playing. Okay, Russia doesn't care, as some of you might know. Russia does things their own way, and that applies to goalies as well. And so with Union, he never got an opportunity to even know what he was in big game situations. Like, he was removed from the games. So then they put him in the VHL because there was no room for him. So they moved him to VHL, and then he became a backup there, where he came in relief, I believe, 6 out of 9 times in the span of like 2 months, which is like, I've never seen it. Okay. Like, I felt so bad for the kid. He never looked confident. He looked rattled, and he was downright terrible. And I'm sure Colorado was terrified as I was, being like, oh, this is a huge miss. And what have I done? And then this year, I was all eyes on the second he got to camp, and he looked like a completely different goalie, completely different. Just much more confident, much more precise with his skating, and he is very quick, which he shares with Nabokov. That's one thing about both goalie prospects that they have. They're lightning quick, very good skaters. He has improved drastically. He's much better at dynamically shifting in his net, trying to look around screens, laterally adjusting, and remaining tight and sealed. He was very open with everything last season. That has changed. He's sealed. He's much more difficult to shoot through, which is critical. He's still susceptible occasionally. Like, he'll go into overlap position and they get really, really crouched down. And again, he's not very tall. He's about 6'1", 6'1.5". So that's something that's almost like Logan Thompson. Logan Thompson makes it work. So far, Union's made it work, where he'll just shrink in the net, and it's like, what are you doing? Get bigger. But it works for him, and that's because Thompson's a freak athlete. Union's also a freak athlete. That's the reason I'm bringing that up. So Union is like the wild card of this pool for me. And like overall, because Union might end up similar to something that is like Nabokov, though admittedly at this stage in their careers, Nabokov is ahead. But Union is catching up. He has like a .956 save percentage right now in the MHL, has not lost a game. I think he just got a shutout today as we're recording this, actually. Now, he is on, again, like one of the best teams in the division, and he's crushing like lower end competition most nights. But even against Monte-Ugri, he was dominant. So that's my long-winded way of letting you all know what Ivan Union actually is, because I've never seen anything written on him publicly. So nobody actually scouts publicly; they just pretend to. So that's Union. Jerome, let's go over Gulyayev and Brindley.
Well, Gulyayev was a guy who was, interesting in his draft year because he had talent. I will go back even before his draft year. I remember you and I were watching Gleb Trikazov playing for Omsk in the MHL playoff. They had this like amazing series against. I think it was
one of the best ever. Huh?
Yeah, was it either Loco or SK? I can't remember.
It was Local. Local.
It was like we watched like full game because the games were so good. They were mostly watching for Trikazov, but Loco had Perivalov, who was also a good draft prospect back then. But there was this tiny, small defenseman on Ohms that was flying everywhere. I was like, who's this? Who are you? And that was his -1 draft year. And then his draft year, he was a over point per game player in the MHL, play a bit in the KHL, also in the VHL. But we ranked him 43rd. For smaller defensemen like him, it's really hard for them to play. And we didn't think offensively, like, he was good, but not special offensively. So that's a bit of the lesson over the years that we have learned with smaller defensemen. If we don't think your offense or your upside offensively is we can categorize it as special, it's really hard for us to rank you, top 32 basically. So he went 31st in the draft. He has played in the KHL ever since. So this year it's his 3rd year in the KHL. I was looking at his ice time, like this year, like he's not playing a lot. He's playing around 10, 12 minutes per game so far this year, which is not really a good sign. for this ranking, like we did mention Nabokov, and I was like, who do we pick? At number one here between Nabokov and him, and based on what Nabokov, I think we're pretty damn sure he's going to be an NHL goalie. Maybe just a backup, maybe a one A 1B type of situation. Gulyarev, we don't know if that will result in a future NHLer. We're not sure yet. I can't, like, his development as not gone maybe what we like just in the KHL. And I know Omsk is always a pretty good team in the KHL, and sometimes it's tough for younger player to play and be impactful. So that's a bit of a concern we have when projecting Goliath for the NHL. Is what we see in Omsk and the KHL the real version of this young player? That's remains to be seen. I think based on how he's been used this year, I think it's about time he comes to North America. I think the Avalanche would love to have him at least in with their AHL team, and there will not be any 10-minute of ice time per game in the AHL. He would play a lot, so he's a tricky one. Avalanche have not shy away from drafting or signing smaller player. Obviously, Kyle McCarr is a stud, but they still have Samuel Girard on the team. They also drafted Sean Barons that we could talk about a bit. So they have not shy away from those small puck moving defensemen.
Jerome, you should mention too, Kyle McCarr, he did grow physically after they drafted him too.
Yeah.
Like Kyle McCarr was what, 6 feet when he was drafted, I think, right?
5'11".
5'11". So there you go. So yeah, he had a growth spurt.
I mean,
you're right. Smaller.
I mean, I never, when I watch Kyle McCarr, that I think of him as a smaller defenseman. To be honest, he's so good that it doesn't matter. Like, we all know he's a lock for the Hall of Fame. He's what 25, 26 years old at this point. He's so good, and we had him ranked really high in his draft year before anyone else. So, but that's not the point here. Guryayev is one of those smaller left D. We'll see, but I think we'll have a better idea about him once he comes over. Gavin Bridley, the Avalanche traded for him in a trade in the offseason. That was a tricky one for us. Even in his draft year, we had a lot of debate about him. One thing is clear about him. We know his compete level is always great. We know he can really skate. That's never been an issue. Not a sure thing about him, but we knew worst case he can be a decent depth player at the NHL level. The question was, can he be higher in your lineup? Can he be a top 6 guy? Can he be a really good third line player? His first pro year last year didn't really go, I think, as smooth as I think a lot of people thought. A lot of people thought he'd be in the NHL last year, and he was not. And he played in the American Hockey League. Not a lot of a success, but he was still a very fast, very hardworking player that can, help you with bringing some really good energy to your team. He can kill penalties. He can do a lot of nice things with his speed and compete level. So we have him third. I mean, I don't think we think of him as a top 6 guys. It's just the talent level that Colorado has in their prospect pool. It's very limited here. So maybe Brindley ends up being an NHL player and he's just a 4th line player. Maybe he can get to a 3rd line level, but that's as high in the lineup he's gonna get here. The prospect pool of the Avalanche is not really good. So when you have a guy ranked 3rd and he might just be a 4th line player, that's a telling signs that it's not exactly the best prospect pool. But it's not really the scouts' fault. When you don't have a lot of draft picks, it's tough to create magic with those picks. So Sean Barron's another smaller defenseman, missed all of last season, I believe, with a knee injury. That's going to be tricky for him, for the NHL, and coming back from an injury, and depending, like, that knee injury cannot affect his skating, because if a 5'10" defenseman like him and his skating is affected by the knee injury, that's almost like gonna take him out of the NHL. So it's gonna be interesting to see how he does. Linus Funk, a Swedish D that we completely miss in last year's draft. He's in with the London Knights. We've heard some feedbacks from the London Knights camp that we did miss on this player. So I'm going to be curious to see how he does this year with the Knights. The Knights have two good draft eligible prospects. So by watching those two, I'm going to be able to watch how Funk is doing with the Knights. So maybe I'll finish with Zakhar Bardakov, who was a guy that we really like in his draft year. Like, we rank him 59th in 2021. He went in the 7th round. We just love him as a complete. How can I say this politely? A complete maniac on the ice. He's very old school. Plays physical. Will cross the line at times. He's gonna have people trying to kill him on the ice. He doesn't care. He plays his own way, and he has some underrated skill. Not obviously not for top 6, but I think in Colorado right now, I think he's on the 4th line. So maybe there's a chance down the road that he can move up, maybe to a 3rd line role. He can play center. He can play wing. I think he can kill penalties. He's a really interesting one. Oh, well, maybe the last one for me, Brad. Another Russian. As you notice, Colorado not shying away from drafting Russians. Just on that list here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Russian. So
Sure.
that's actually a good strategy, Brad. If you don't have a lot of picks and you get like later picks, just draft Russians. They are usually pretty underrated and underscouted. So, but Prishapov, he's a really good story. Came to the Q at 17. It was during the COVID year, so not really an easy situation for him. Played 3 full seasons in the Q. Went undrafted twice, and I watched him, and he just didn't seem to get it, or like things were not really going well for him until his last season. He's never going to be a big offensive, production guy. Like his last year in the Q, I think he had 67 points. So nothing really crazy, but his attention to details is really good. He became an elite penalty killers in the Q. And how crazy is it that in your 3rd draft year you finally get picked in the 7th round, and then a few months later you're playing in the NHL. I've never seen that before. It's like completely crazy story. And crazy thing about him, it was he came to the Q and he never went back to Russia. He stayed in Quebec and Canada for 3 straight years. Never went back. Really cool story, and I was really happy to see when he made the NHL. I think defense will be his calling card for the NHL. I think he has a chance to be down the road, maybe a defensive forward at the NHL level who can kill penalties. He's definitely one guy that I'm cheering for. Not everything was easy for him in the queue, but he didn't quit. Also, he could have just say, "I'm going back home. I'll go back to see my family. I'll play in the MHL." But no, he stick to the queue, and now he's pretty close to be NHLer with the Avalanche. So good on him. If you look at the rest of the list here, Maximilian Curin, big center, played in Tri-City in the WHL. Not the most gifted shooter or scorer, but plays a pretty complete game. Underrated playmaking skill with that player. Like if you look at his stats, it's like his assists almost triple his goal output every year. So he's an interesting one. Maybe one day he can become like a depth center in the NHL. But we'll see how he does at the pro level first. That will be a big test for him down the road. So, Brad, you have a few last few words on some of those guys before we wrap up the video on the Avalanche prospects.
Yeah. So what's fascinating about Gulyev and Barons is they're undersized puck-moving defensemen. When you look at the playoffs last season, Florida completely overwhelmed teams with a chip-in-place, dump-and-chase style of hockey where they were relentless on a forecheck and then basically crushed every team off of cycles. And that goes against what Barons and Gulyev can do defensively. So that's one of the reasons why this player type is dying. It's why small defensemen are not anything that teams really want to go near unless they're unbelievably dynamic, like McCarr in his draft year, used, right?
There were 0 defensemen under 6 foot drafted last year. Like that's, yeah. I mean, every class is different, obviously. Like some class you have, but I'm curious to see if Gulyayev was draft eligible last year and Barons, like
he would have gone later.
Yeah.
Barons would have gone way later and Gulyev would have gone later for sure. It's about adapting dynamically. It's nothing to do with Colorado's fault. At the time that they drafted them, the league looked like it was maybe going towards that direction where you could have more smaller defensemen because everything was predicated off of being able to stretch play make and pass the puck and transition quickly. And Colorado loves to have a team with speed. That's one of the reasons they brought Brindley in. It's one of the reasons that when you look past their draft history, a lot of their players, very good neutral zone entry rates per 60 or project to long term. So they do have strategies with that. But it's fascinating because, as you just mentioned, like if they were in last year's draft, there was no chance they'd be going as high as they're currently positioned. The other factor is Francisco Delche, who is slightly bigger than them. He's a unique position because unlike Prishapov, who you just talked about, who's specialized, I feel like Delche, the chances of him getting the NHL are completely predicated off of how much he can specialize. Because if you look at his game, he's pretty well rounded, but really not like the master of nothing. Like he's just solid everywhere. Is that good enough? Like again, this goes back to a player type that's kind of dying. So it will be very interesting from a development perspective to see if Gulyev, Barons, or Delche hit at all. And then I'll leave on the last note. Linus Funk was a prospect we knew in November. And then there was too many prospects and we forgot about him. I never went back to rewatch him after forgetting. Then we watched him after he was drafted and we swore. And that's where we're at. That said, he does look more like a shutdown insulating style defenseman than a two-way defenseman. But I might be eating some crow pie there. That might not be like, I don't know how he's looking in London right now. But based off last season, I did break down his game offensively, and he was pretty raw. So we'll see. But 6'3" right shot defenseman, pretty darn good pickup by Colorado, and that's one that slipped through the cracks on us because there's just so many darn players to watch, and every year we're going to miss a couple as a result of that. But it's not the most exciting system, but there's a couple of like if Brindley can get to that third line role, that would really help them. He's one for us, I think, where it's funny when we had him ranked that low, most people thought we were out of our minds and had lost touch with reality and were meant for like the Jurassic era. And then, his +1, he does well. It's like, yeah, maybe you're right. Cause his U20 was very good. He's very good when he's in international uniform. But his rate of execution in college was nowhere near what people think. That would be like on any player I felt like was misunderstood. It was Gavin Brindley in his initial draft season. And then in the AHL, we had projected him to struggle, and then he did. And so it's interesting. We'll see what happens with him. But he was always like a super high motor energy forward who his secondary skill set was his offense, not a primary skill set. I think some people misinterpreted that. And that's one of the reasons he's on Colorado now as opposed to still with Columbus. And I know, so from you, it's like, well, Columbus has an embarrassment of riches. They got to trade players to get something back. That's Adam Fantilli's best friend. So they're willing to part with Adam Fantilli's best friend. That really tells you something, I think. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe, he's made the team out of camp. We'll see what happens to him.
Yeah, and for Funk, like he's in a great program with the London Knights. They usually will make those players better. He technically he could be there for 2 years, so that's a great spot for him to get better. And maybe if we do one of those rankings next year, maybe he's a bit higher next season. Some guys will be in the NHL, so technically he should be higher than where he is now. So anyway, that's gonna wrap up this episode here on the Colorado Avalanche and their prospect pool. I want to thank everyone for watching. Our next video will be about the Columbus Blue Jackets. Speaking of Gavin Brindley, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to our channel, like our video, comment, anything to help us grow the channel and for more people to see what we do. So Brad, thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys for the next video. So stay tuned.
See everybody.